little bit shorter,
Excellent.
but we've been on top of the VC scene in the MENA region really since the start of this podcast, and then of late as well. As our listeners and viewers remember, we had venture capitalist Iyad Al-Bayouk on a few weeks ago, and he's just the best and he's brilliant. So it was a treat to have him on, and I'm going to get back to him in a second actually. But Richard, my one big thing this week, some mixed news on the VC front in the MENA region. We discussed this is something we've been following. MENA startups raised $445 million in May 2023 last month, and that was spread across 39 transactions. These figures are, of course, from the latest from WAMDA, which is, we should just note, is really an awesome resource for not just for people in the space as well, but in general, it has great stories and articles on regional startups, how they're doing it, their stories, and what their market entry plan is. It's a really cool resource if you're into this, but even if you're not, it's cool.
It is.
Looking at these numbers, Richard, let's start first with the good. So this 445 million raised last month is a significant turnaround from the preceding month, April 2023, in which just 7 million was raised across 11 deals. Richard, we did a segment on that. Ramadan was really not an excuse there because Ramadan was in the same month the previous year in 2022, and raised $297 million across 29 deals. So, there was just a bad month, and that's okay. But so there was a bit of a bounce back here, Richard, and that's good stuff. Something I was looking at pretty closely after that tough month of Ramadan, though, was what kind of bounce back are we going to get? Are we going to get a large number bounce back? We're going to get hey, everybody took a month off and we're going to start investing again. And so this sort of top line figure is good news for the MENA region in general. And then good news for Saudi Arabia specifically is the kingdom led the pack in the total number of deals with 15 in investments, which is actually really good. And our previous guest on the 966 just 2 weeks ago, Iyad Al-Bayouk, who is general manager at Flat Six Labs, accounted for, I believe, 7 of those. So he did half of the new investments in Saudi Arabia over the last month, which is amazing. And that is really good news for Saudi Arabia because he's very early stage seed focused. I mean, incubator stage stuff, which is what Saudi Arabia needs and what other nations around the GCC need. But onto the not so great news, Richard. The vast majority of this figure is just one deal that was announced last month, and that was the debt financing deal for buy now, pay later startup Tabby, which is 350 million. And Tabby is based in the UAE. So country-wise, the UAE led the pack with $422 million raised across 14 deals. That's 90% of the total raise. So big month for the UAE, but again, that was mostly just one deal. When you take out Tabby's debt round, and all of this is according to WAMDA, and I suggest anybody go to WAMDA to read. There's more data than I'm not going to get to here, but check it out there. But when you take out Tabby's debt round, the total amount raised in the region drops to $95 million, with the UAE accounting for 71.6 million of that. So that's not a lot of money. And so what we're kind of seeing here is it wasn't really Ramadan last month. We're seeing sort of the global macroeconomic landscape not help this situation out at all. But we're also really seeing a startup scene that in the Middle East region that is just not booming like many are saying that it is. It's still very nascent. These are very small numbers compared to how much money there is here to invest in startups. So, and then Richard, more sort of not great news. The focus of a lot of these investments is still going into things like fintech and e-commerce. I mean, those are good businesses and can make money for VCs and for those who are doing startups in those businesses, but they are not really globally exportable technologies, at least not at a large scale. So we're not really talking about things that are going to start really attracting foreign investment because a lot of these things exist in other countries already. So yeah, the other thing, Richard, that's not great overall is that startups with all male founding teams attracted the majority of funding with 92.8%, while startups with male and female co-founders raised 7.2% of the total. Only one female founded startup raised an investment in May, and that was a $10,000 grant given to Egyptian health tech Chefa. So, it is a mixed picture. It's good to see a bounce back from the really troublesome month last month. And to be honest, 5 years ago, this would have been an amazing month because VC essentially did not exist in the region, at least not in the modern sense at all until about 2016, 2017, or very, very small numbers. So it's good to see the bounce back. It's good to see that nice top line number represent a bounce back, but it does show just how nascent the VC space in the region and really in Saudi Arabia, unfortunately, in particular, is. So we'll be staying on top of this, Richard. Personal space interest of mine as well, but on this show, like we stay on top of this because it really is impactful for Vision 2030. So you'd like to see more deals. We congratulate Iyad Al-Bayouk for his work in this space because it's impressive. We want to see more. Yeah, golf clap for Iyad. We'd like to see more of that. We'd like to see that at scale. And I think there are other solutions that can be mixed in here that can help out. So just interesting update here to this story.
That's a good one, Lucian, and you're deep into this. I mean, I think you have a profound and broad understanding of it. So I don't have a lot to add. The only thing I would, the only observation I would make is it feels like a period of reassessment, and I say that because globally, investment was down significantly. There's an interesting Crunchbase article here, but in the first quarter, you saw basically a 53% decline year over year and over compared to 2022. And this is not just, a particular stage. Every funding stage was down between 44% and 54% year over year. So in some ways, the Saudi, environment is mirroring the global environment. And also, I guess part of this, slowdown, economy, inflation, whatever, it could be a million other things. But I think part of it is a reassessment or an assessment of where the investment opportunities are. Because it seems like, certain sectors have been fully engaged and aggressively pursued, and maybe those values aren't as good as they were, or maybe they're looking for other things. But I do feel like this is a little interlude here, that it's sort of part and parcel of the ongoing process in Saudi Arabia, but also globally. So Saudi Arabia right now is sort of the globe writ small. And I'm assuming, there are decisions ongoing now about where to place money and how much to place that will result in an upturn, in later quarters, and probably not too long. But I think that's happening. That'll happen globally as well.
I think so too, Richard. And it's not a bad thing that it's mirroring the global economy, I should say. And, Silicon Valley is in a lot of trouble right now because it's tough for them to raise new funds at the VC level. But then it's also tough for entrepreneurs and startups to raise funding from VCs. You have the VCs sitting on, and this figure kind of varies depending on where you look, but it's like $300 billion of dry powder. They're just sitting on it saying, hey, like, this isn't a good time to invest. Come back soon. So it's sort of like everything's slower, like gummed up. So it's not bad that Saudi Arabia is mirroring that. It shows their connectivity to the whole system, and that's good. And I do expect this to change. And we talked with Iyad Al-Bayouk about this. I mean, there will be an uptick in M&A, which will be nice for the two sides who participate in that for a little bit. And then I sort of agree with his assessment that really the start of next year will be key. And I think at that point, you'll see some of this local dry powder start to really get placed in. But again, just like kudos to him, because right now what Saudi Arabia needs, in my opinion, is more like, move quickly and break things startups that are really, really risky from an investor standpoint, but like possibly game changing, low success rate. But that's how you really develop an ecosystem, because VC is the riskiest of all asset classes, pretty much, not including crypto and whatever other far alternative investments you may find. But I think Saudi Arabia's like trend over the last 5 or 6 years is really good. And, this number isn't great. The number last month was really not great, but I think the future is bright. I really think that.